Hello and welcome to CSP Financial Group. I'm Paul Pettit, your host for this podcast. Here we dive into the world of financial literacy and explore the invaluable work of our advisors. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. So welcome you both to this podcast episode. It's for the three-generation conversation about money and finance. We have here. We have Gen Z, and I'm Gen X. So welcome both for being here. I really appreciate your time to be here with me, and also we can get this conversation started. All right, today's episode is about money and finance in three generations at Gen Z, Millennial, and Gen X. So my first question I'm going to ask is, I'm going to go with Charlize. So Gen Z, basically, how do you define financial success this stage in your life?
I think saving now. I think that's going to be the most successful thing that we can do is save now, because that's going to work for us in the long run. And we have the time, and that time for the money to compound and grow over our lives is going to be incredible. And I think that's honestly the most successful thing that you can do.
Great. Thank you for that. Yeah. How about you, Kim, Millennial? How has your approach to financial changes since the first, you enter like workforce, or how you deal with money in that area?
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting that you said saved, Charlize, because I was thinking, and I think it's important to like at least introduce my age. I just turned 40. I was born in 85, and I would consider myself an elder millennial. So I'm kind of on the cusp between millennial and what's the generation above me?
I think Gen X.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and my parents are older. So my dad was born in 43. My mom was 51. So they were in the World War II, or I'm sorry, the Vietnam War era. And that's just another conversation itself, right? So I found that my generation is kind of like, we learned from our parents where they came from a world of like scarcity. So they really learned to conserve. And so as far as, for my generation, we're like, wow, we grew up with a lot of scarcity. And so part of I think I can speak for, I'm speaking for myself certainly, but for my generation, there's part of us that, saved, but we also learned a lot the hard way, meaning like we just went through a phase of like YOLO, YOLO, we created that phrase. Like, you only live once, so you got to do what you can while you can. And I think it really paved the way for like living with life on purpose. So it was like, yeah, YOLO, and we don't really think about the future because we're like, well, we look at our parents. They've really lived their life suffering, and now they can't even live. And my mom is like, she's even telling me, she's like, didn't travel when I was young when I could, and back then I didn't have the money to. And now that I'm older and I have the money to, I don't have the health. And that was her biggest advice for me. And my mom is now 70. Oh my gosh, she was born in 51. So she's 75? And my dad just passed, he was 81. So, as far as my generation goes, I think we really learned from our parents that, you YOLO. And we're also learning you can't, YOLO doesn't last either. You gotta actually like save. And so I think we started saving a little bit later than Charlize's generation, where she's like, okay, look, you can only live for today for so long, but you learn at a younger age to actually be smarter with your money and to be a better steward of it.
Yeah, that conversation lead me to think about, I'm the Gen X. So I'm like 15 years older than you, actually, Kim. And so when it comes to money, I'm more of, because when I came here to this country, I didn't have any money. And growing up doing the killing field, I didn't have any money. I didn't know anything about money. There's no education. There's absolutely nothing that our civilization, but learning to survive in the jungle. So that's have a lot to do with how I deal with money today, and it's impact my life incredibly. It was just harder to really understand the concept of, let go of hard work and then enjoying the money that I'm making. And then, so between those two, I just don't know exactly how to deal with that for a long time, the longest time, until like recently to, learning how to be free around money. But I can tell you, growing up during that era and first immigrated to this country, it's hard. All I can tell you is all I know, the best I know is hard work. And that's what I've been applying to every situation in my life. And I think last night we have a conversation, Charlize, and I think that I also like tend to shift my mindset away from problem and dive into hard work to avoid any kind of problem, conflicts, to avoid any kind of issue around me as well. So, I'm in that space where money is, it's just like an object. And, fortunately, we're in the financial field, so we know how to buy a lot of insurance and save, whatever we can. But at the same time, I have a hard time dealing with money in that space of being free around it. Yeah. So I don't know if you guys feel like you're more freer when it comes to your money, and how you create it and how you get it, from job, career, and how you earn that money. Do you feel more freer than I am, who been so impacted for so many level of trauma that happen in life? And I'm pretty sure that our audience are not the same way. Nobody, have experienced life like me, but I might have older generation tend to hold on to money very tightly because they're afraid of losing it, and it's not enough.
Yeah, and it does make me think too. And Charlize, feel free to jump in. I was just thinking, there's a difference. I wonder what the difference in mentality between, like, immigrants and those who've grown in, grown up in America and at different ages. Because if you think about, like, if you lived for many generations in America, your experience of, America's like the melting pot, the land of the free. It's the land of milk and honey, right? So like that was a symbol for abundance for the rest of the world. I mean, the rest of the world were dealing with like war and famine and a lot of different things that Americans, born and bred here, haven't experienced firsthand. What they may have indirectly heard about it from their grandparents. Even the Irish had, a lot of scarcity, right? And that, multiple generations later, it's like you have this different approach to it. So it's like, I'm curious about the generational impact of, scarcity. Because like you said, it's like, or at least you alluded to, you kind of you take your experience of freedom and money comes from, your experience directly. But then you really also learn it from your parents and your grandparents. You take on their conversations as if it's the truth. My mom was like, money is hard and hard to earn and harder to keep, is what she told me. And you don't want to trust anybody either with it. I mean, that was our whole life. I mean, distrust was inherent in our family, and it wasn't just of the government. It was like of the banks, of the government, of really like people in general, because they're always going to look out for their best interest. So those were conversations of scarcity that, like, I've inherited. And I would say that as a kid, I mean, everything, I didn't experience freedom. And I think still now, like, I'm transforming and catching myself in the mindset of like, where I get limited by how much I can even earn, or how much how much is shameful amount of money, like there's like the whole world of shame around it. So I have guilt around it. It's like, as soon as I have it, I find myself wanting to spend it because I feel guilty having it.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That's very interesting. So, Charlie, go ahead. What the
Well, I
impact?
think, yeah. Well, something that you said earlier, Kim, where you said you learned from the generations before you. And that's how I feel. Like I'm learning from my parents or my grandparents, and I'm able to make decisions based off of learning from their mistakes and them providing the tools for me now to change my path and be successful with the knowledge that I've been given. And I also think, like, for example, with scarcity, you saw like the older generations were like hoarders, or they hoarded a lot of things in their house. They didn't want to let things go, not just like physical things, but I think emotional things or things that have happened to them in their lives or experiences that they've had that they're not able to be free from. And I think my generation is a lot better at communicating and being open and honest and being free from those burdens and not being afraid to share with others. And that's how I feel like I'm able to be free. And that kind of ties in with your question that you asked, Mom, about being free. And I do feel a lot of freedom because of the knowledge that I was given and the tools that I was given. And then as long as I'm able to steward that, I can create a future for me and my family and my children and so on. And I think like we're going through an era of minimalism, and we don't like consumerism and learning that, like, yes, like YOLO, right? Like I think we are more aware of like we want that work-life balance, and we don't want to just work all the time for the rest of our lives, and we want to prioritize other things that are important, like health and just well-being. And I think we are now seeing that, like kind of trying to get ourselves out of the matrix, right? And just always being in this routine and schedule, but actually having a little bit more spontaneity and yet, like, so having a balance. So maybe not overly saving, like maybe past generations too, like kind of money under the mattress type of thing, but also like saving though for emergencies and also retirement and doing what we can, but also not overdoing it, because you want to live a life, you want to live a great life in the future, but you also want to live a great life now while you're young and healthy and able to do those things. So I think honestly, my generation is like finding balance. And also being an entrepreneur and using social media to your advantage and different things like that. And I think there are a lot more opportunities where the older generations maybe didn't have, where it was more like brick and mortar. And now you can work from anywhere and really start anything. And everyone has that equal opportunity, which is really wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. That is so wonderful to hear. And I think that's the blessing of our country, was built it by the hard work of older generation to get to where you guys are at today. And I would say that we are very grateful for that blessing to the next generation. And the other thing is that I hear what you say is that, you learn from, I mean, since I'm your mom, so how much of that, of what I hoarding money, impacting you and my hard work ethic, my, working ethic, impacting you as a, generations now, how you deal with money in a way of that's, opposite than I am, right?
Mm-hmm.
So would you say that, is that more of a positive outlooks or something that are more like, coming from a space of how do you get that freedom? Because I don't think all Gen Z, what I'm trying to get is like all Gen Z thinking the way you thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, how do you like get to be so free like that? Because I know for sure, I talk to other Gen Z, they don't have that freedom around either. They feel like they lack of opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's that lack of knowledge. A lot of people just aren't educated in the things that I've learned, because I've grown up with you and Dad, where I've been able to be taught about money at a young age and had the guidance of my dad being like my financial coach and telling me what it is that I need to do to set myself up for success. And not everyone has that. And I think that if they were given that opportunity, that would be beneficial for them. But it's also like you have to have self-discipline. And, I think everyone's different. I think that with social media, it's easier to compare your life, and as well as now I feel like people are able to make money in like so many different ways and might get sucked into things that, I don't know, it even like with consumerism, like there is a lot, like there's so many different things that you can purchase now, and like people are creating all kinds of things, and it's like, okay, when is like enough like with having so much stuff. And I don't know, I think that for me, I guess it's easier to say because it's like I've been given those tools, so somebody else might not feel like they, I guess, have that same like opportunity because of the lack of education.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, thank you for saying that. That was my next question, is to lead you to answer, what does social media play in your role, financial decision role, when it comes to your money, right? So Kim can say something about that.
Sure. Well, the first thing is, identify where where your own perspective around money limits you. And, we have tons of tools available. And I think, I love the idea of education. Like when you start at the base of educating people on what tools are actually available. I mean, most people don't have the tools available, and so they use what they know. And that's the difference, right? Like if I knew everything that you knew, of course I would do exactly probably what you would do, right? So the difference in the generational gap and the income gap between what we're seeing now is exposure and education. But I would even say that there's a gap between not just exposure, but the willingness to learn for yourself. Like there's tons of information out there. I mean, we're in the information age right now. So not only technology is available, social media, I mean, everything is available to us right now. And there's also almost too much information in a way where it's like, how do you know what information to listen to? And I think it comes down to there's twofold. One is understanding yourself and your own behavior around money. And that takes a level of self-awareness that I think really takes development, right? And then there's the actually understanding what tools are available to us and what makes the most sense. And, I lean towards the academic, what academics have devoted their lives to studying this topic and taking that rather than, subjective social media, like I need to know your credibility and what have you learned and what resources and how long have you been studying this and why does it make sense? So at least for me, I can see that there's a big emphasis on understanding both. I mean, it's really a critical to understand yourself as much as it is to understand the tools. You can have all the best tools in the world, but if you don't know how you're going to use them, then you're still at a disadvantage.
Yeah. Social media, create a lot of impact on people's life nowadays because we live in the world of compete and compare. So how we spend our money sometimes can really more of a false, shallow place, and then without proper education, like as Charlie said, they could go off in the wrong direction, maybe live too much without saving for their future. But but Charlize, I think you learned something from your dad. He's talked to you about the rule. What is it? 80/20 rule, right? And I think you learn how to save 20% of your money that you made, and then you save, you spend 80%, and that's on your living expense. So without any doubt, is that what you've been doing for the past how many years since you start working until now?
Yeah, I think I've been saving as much as I can that makes sense, where I'm not also drowning in debt or anything like that. I don't have debt, and also making sacrifices now for maybe things that I want so that I can be able to save as much as I do. And I mean, if you're talking about the rules that dad has taught me, it's, max out your Roth IRA and match your employer's 401k and max out the HSA and have life insurance. And if you can afford it, like maybe have that cash value aspect of your life insurance. And then also have 3 to 6 months of emergency expenses in your bank account. So I think following all of those rules allows me to feel more free around like spending the extra stuff, because then it's like, okay, well, I've done what I think I can do. And if there are other things that I want to do, like maybe save for a future home or something like that, then I'm going to have to set aside more for that and maybe make sacrifices to spending that money today. And with what Kim was saying about social media, I agree with it's almost like information overload. You really do have access to so much at your fingertips. And maybe that's why I felt like everyone does have that opportunity, just because you can use AI or ChatGPT or Google even, and just look up information and look up like what are the basic things that you should probably do. And I've seen a lot of videos where they just tell you should, put money in a Roth or other things. And it like, that's all valuable information. And again, like applying it and yes, you can have all the tools, but it's like, do you know how to use it? And I think that's why I said for me, I'm just thankful that I was able to have like my dad as like my coach, because then I'm able to stay on track and stay disciplined and know exactly what to do, because I might know to do those things, but I might not know how to apply it. And he's been the one to guide me to apply it, and also, yeah, again, keep me on track, like not get caught up in the moment and or compare with other people online, like materialistic things like, oh, why am I saving so much for the future? Like I could just use this now and improve my lifestyle now, but that can really like hurt me in the future. But of course, like it's also like you don't want to get caught up that in that either, and like be in fear, and and there are people who wait until later in life, and it's never too late either. So it's just good to like when you find out, it's really just like applying it as best as you can. Yeah.
When you say about, having a coach, I think that's very important, right? And a lot of people out there who don't have a coach when it comes to their finances and how they deal with money. So they don't really know where to find that kind of information to help themselves. And I think that what our company able to come up with is creating that space for them to talk about money, and then getting the service and needs through our company. Advisors that we have here are very knowledgeable and are able to coach them through any kind of situations when it comes to their finances. So I'm pretty, I feel very blessed and pretty sure that our advisor are very knowledgeable in all those aspects of a comprehensive planning. So yeah, and Kim can say something about that, since you are advisor, and how do you deal with money, and then how you able to apply that knowledge to help your clients.
Yeah, I'm itching to talk about this topic so Paul, because the idea of having a coach, and I've been a coach in transformation and personal development and relationships for since 10 years now, 11 years now. And I've actually talked, one of the biggest concerns I've seen for clients is prospective clients is, why should I pay somebody to coach me around money? And my answer to that is that how much money are you losing without a coach? And it's hard to see short term until you actually see it broken down long term, of like how much money have you already lost because of the mistakes you made, simply because if you didn't know any better. You just didn't know where to invest. You didn't know, where or how long, or investor behavior. There was a study that was done that showed the average investor actually makes 3% less than an investor with a coach. And the reason why is because of just our behavior. We don't know where to invest. We kind of skip around. We market time, and we think it's mostly knee-jerk reactions to what's happening in the market and what we see on social media. So part of that, having a coach is, critical. We have a coach for everything. The best athletes in the world, or the best performing athletes in the world, all have a coach, and they have more coaches than anybody else. They have a coach for, if you look at Olympic athletes, they have a nutrition coach, they have a stretch coach, they have there's a strategy for everything, right? Or a coach for everything. So, I would say, if money was such a huge area of your life, why wouldn't you have a coach to coach you and steer you in the right direction? There's another piece here too, is that, when it comes to like investing, we talk about, if you look at the countries that have the highest wealth by country, the highest country of all, in the world is Switzerland, with the highest wealth. They average, based on Statista, I'm looking here, the average citizen in 2023, Switzerland led the ranking of countries with the highest average wealth per adult, with approximately $709,600 per person. That is astronomical. I mean, it's a huge number. And the reason why is because of they invest in appreciating assets. I mean, they really have been taught it. It's a generational common knowledge that you invest in appreciating assets. The reason why I bring that up is because, we're obsessed with money. And yet we, as much as we are starting to be open about it, and Charlize, I think your generation is like more open and receptive to talking about it than I think a lot of us, even because there has been so much guilt and shame around it. So like talking about it even is like shameful. It's like, oh, it's so rude. You don't want to ever talk about it, right? So I think because the more open that you can talk about it, the more easily that information can be spread, and the right information, not just, that's why I think, there's a flood of information out there and people are hungry for it, but it's also the wrong information and conflicting information sometimes. You mentioned the basic rules of putting money into your Roth and matching your employer's contribution and having 3 to 6 months. And those are the basic rules. But I mean, those are the basic, very, very basic things. But you have people going after like chasing money where it's the easiest to get, like crypto or Bitcoin, because you see other people having it and you see these, I have friends my age and your age that are very much like doing what they've been told, like herding bias. And then there's the missing out, like FOMO, the fear of missing out. And those are the behavioral aspects that have people listen to the wrong things simply because they just don't know better. And then they end up losing money. And, historically, the people who make the most money are the people generally not necessarily going off of what social media is telling them. They're doing it as a what do they say? It's like the getting rich by saving, saving a little bit at a time. I mean, the getting rich slowly game rather than trying to get rich fast because they're chasing returns. So as a coach, I would say, like looking, the best place to look is like not necessarily outside of yourself, but really like slow down and even like consider consulting with a financial expert before you make these huge life-changing decisions that could be really costly.
Mhm. Yeah. So what tool do you use to help you, discipline yourself in budgeting yourself in a way where you save some for your future and then spend what you need to be necessarily for your living now, in
Yeah.
today's, right? So what tool
Yeah.
do you and what tool would you recommend, others who listen to use to budget their finance and money?
Yeah. Well, I put everybody through the financial foundations course so that they can, get seriously, all of my clients go through the financial foundations course. And if they can't this quarter, then they're in the next quarter or they're watching the recordings, right? So that would be the first thing is getting some classes and getting a coach because it also creates accountability and laying the foundation. And then, the basic rules, discipline, it's like talking about it. And my husband and I talk about our money all the time. I mean, like literally, like we, once a week, we like we just look to see where we're at, and we created kind of a game plan, like like when I say game plan, it really is like a game because it's like, okay, like our goal is X amount, like let's save this, we have a number that we're playing for to get to the next, the next milestone or when we win this game this time around. So, it's like having a team that you can play with. I think by yourself, I think not talking about it is kind of the biggest detriment to yourself and in your own family. I mean, that's the biggest reason for divorce, right? Is when couples don't talk about money or money isn't the source of it. I would say the lack of communication about money is a big piece to relationship issues.
Yeah, I think so too. And Charlize, what tool do you use for yourself to take care of your finances and money? And how do you help your, next generation and your clients?
Yeah, I mean, I love using Retirement Analyzer. I know that's a software that we use internally, and that we use for our clients. I love using it for myself. I like going in there quite frequently, actually, especially when things change. I like using the expense worksheet, the budget worksheet in there to see, because it calculates like what do you have left over at the end of every month after contributing to all of your different accounts and paying all of your expenses and taxes. So it's a really good like big picture. But besides that, I like keeping everything organized, like all of our bank accounts and tracking our credit card statements and account statements. That's something my dad taught me, is because he would have me always look through his credit card statements when I was young and just double check. And if there was anything that looked wrong or maybe got charged that was a mistake, we would have to report it and something like that. And it got me in the habit of doing it for myself. So I always look just to make sure, because sometimes there's even like, it might not happen very often, but sometimes there's a charge where like you're just like, what is this? And it was like an accident, or I don't know, and you might have to get it removed, or just like it depends. Like if it's like a big expense, like even when I was wedding planning, like I loved using like a budget app or like worksheet, and that just to keep everything in one place. Like if you had like an Excel spreadsheet and you were keeping track of everything, I think that's a great way of doing it. I think you just have to be aware, you can't be mindlessly spending money and then you're like, where did it all go? I think you have to be a lot more intentional. I love what you said, Kim, about talking about it and talking about it in your own family and your marriage, because I do think that's important. I think it's important that you and your partner are on the same page if you're sharing finances. I think if you're sharing finances with anyone, you should talk about it and be on the same page, because I think that can create a lot more stress, and you want to be working towards the same goal and be in alignment with your commitment. So we're both on Kevin and I are both on the same page, and with our future and with everything, we discuss everything. And I think that's also what makes it so much easier and stress-free for me, even though he's kind of more like, I don't really want to organize or deal with all of that. So he has me do that, and I'm okay with doing that. So I think just even talking about it is really helpful.
I love that, Shirley's. The Excel document, like I am such an Excel person and Joe refuses to touch it. I mean, he is like not a numbers person. I mean, he's a numbers guy, he understands big numbers, but he doesn't like to go in there and, because it is kind of, I don't know, it's a little redundant. But I think for me, it's fun. It's redundant for him, but it is so fun for me. I mean, even going through frankly, like I even volunteered to do it for some of my clients. Like I'm not I'm not their CPA and I'm not their bookkeeper. But if they are like, I don't want to hire a bookkeeper right now, I'm like, okay, I can take a look at it for you. And like, it is fun to, right now I'm working with a client who just doesn't want to look at her bank statements. I mean, she's just learning and just starting to develop the habits of, separating your business account from your personal. I mean, she's just started it, right? And so now we're kind of separating it. I've created a template for her to be able to go through it each month. And it's the same one that your dad actually showed us and shared with me. So your dad's obsessive with that stuff, which I absolutely love. So it's very rewarding to be able to like look through your numbers and balance it all out.
Yeah, I mean, I am very blessed to have Charles to do all of that stuff, because that mean it relieved me all the responsibility from not have to look at all of that. So the only thing that I'm looking at is, my credit card that I'm spending to make sure that the transaction is correct. But I don't do any budgeting or balancing accounts, because Charles is handling all of that. And, I just trust him that he know everything and he does everything. I do keep in mind, because I'm in the financial industry field, I have all that knowledge in the background, where to look for it if I need it to, right? And then how to balance and then planning and stuff like that. So, but so the audience can understand where all of us come from. All three of us are married, and for my part, I don't participate in budgeting and planning as much, because I just know where the money is going and where it's coming from, but I don't plan, because Charles does all of that. And so it's kind of free me to be, mindful about what I spend, because I have my own spending account that I'm budgeting to spend. But anything above that, it go into our safe space where we invest in saving, things like that. And so it's kind of freed me from, from what's going on with my future, have enough or not. Now, before 5 years ago, I would say that I used to handle, budgeting. But then during that time, it's so complex if you're not able to talk to each other about money. And then if you don't, especially if you are using different different accounts, and you don't know exactly where it's coming from and where it's going, because you don't talk about money. And for the longest time, we were so afraid to talk about money. And I think it comes from a place of scarcity and shame and guilt. And how, my generation look at money is sometimes, we interpret money is more like on a place of, wow, it's hard to make, it's hard to get. And then, we wanted to make sure that our kids have, plan for our kids to have for their future in case they needed to go to college, we can support them to do that. So there's a lot of planning coming in play for myself. But then at the same time, we were very risk taker as well because we're entrepreneur. I built a holistic massage therapist business, and then I was building, the financial business. So it was a lot of hard work putting into building what we have today. And now, I'm only building this one company, and that is financial business. So I don't really, worry a lot anymore, not as much anymore when it comes to my future, because I know that Charles, he did probably the most absolutely best job to prepare us for our future if something ever happened, because so that in that case I'm pretty lucky. I'm very blessed, so I can say that when it comes to the planning part. And I don't look at spreadsheet. I just want to be real with that. I don't look at spreadsheet, and I don't like spreadsheet.
Yeah. Well, I think that's important to know. So, Paul, though, like, because not everybody's a spreadsheet person, but I think what makes them successful ultimately is that they're aware. I mean, you still stay within a certain budget for yourself. So, I would say that is the awareness. You're keeping a budget is, I think is the number. If we just go back to the basics, it's like that is a hard and fast rule. Like don't go past your budget. Otherwise, it really goes into dip into your savings, and then that hurts you long term.
Oh yeah, and if my money hit a certain balance, even if I'm budgeting that to spend, but I do keep my minimums. And then if it hits certain minimum, I'm like, no more. There's something is wrong. So I love to go out to eat nowadays because of, it's only me if I do cook my own food. Charles doesn't really enjoy the vegetable as much as I do. So, and then I'm more of Asian dishes. So everything have a lot of vegetable in it and fish. So I'm now a day I get the blessing to go out and eat more often. So, but then when I see my credit card balance into certain amount, I'm like, nope, I'm not going out today. Even though I know I can afford it, but I just don't. You can ask Charlize sometime, and she have to say, "Mommy, you have to be free around money." I'm like, I don't know about that. So that's where my mindset is. I keep track. I don't look at spreadsheet because I don't have to, but I do keep track in my head. Like, okay, this is the minimum that I have right now.
Oh, another thing I wanted to add that I do is when it comes to bigger purchases, because I think I'm more about quality over quantity now. And from my mistakes of buying things, like impulse buying things, and then I don't even use it and then I get rid of it. So to be more intentional, I keep a list of things that I want and I categorize them, and like household things or clothes or, anything really. I put it in a list and then I prioritize what I need versus what I want. And then if it's something that's been on my list for a while and I still want it, like it's not like an in the moment, like I know I've been thinking about it and marinating on it, then I can see if like my budget allows it and then I'll purchase it. So that's been helping me a lot, be like to not just be wasteful and to know that I really love it. And then sometimes I'm like, there's things I'm like, oh, I actually don't want that. Or it was like trendy, or it's just like, it is just an in the moment thing. So then I delete it. And then, or I just prioritize like things that I know that I will need, but right now I don't have the money for it, or I just don't really want to purchase it right now. So I wait. So I keep it on a list just to remember it. And then I make my way through it. So that's been helping me a lot, actually.
I love that.
So how do you, balance like works and home? I mean, you two don't have any kids yet. So, how do you balance your work life and your home life?
It's interesting. I had to sit there for a second because I'm really, balance is a funny thing. I think we all have different cycles and different ways where, I think balance is it's such a subjective thing, right? Like, it's being aware of what you need, and it's not going to stay the same. Like balance today for me would not look the same, a year from now or even 3 months from now. I mean, frankly, it's like looking at what I need and planning it for the next maybe, few weeks, frankly, because even then it changes, right? So it just comes in waves. Like there's times for me, like, I'll work, 40, 60 hours a week sometimes. And like, that's when I need to be working, right? And then there's also times when I'm like, okay, I'm not working this quarter. Like, right? Like, I think that's why I kind of chose this industry. And for me, I've just learned over the years, like in my 20s, gosh, I worked 60 plus hours every week and I did that for 20 years. And after, at some point I really got burned out. And so which is also part of why I then chose to kind of go on my own and go as run my own business, because you can work as hard as you want when you want, and take the time off when you need to take care of yourself, to kind of replenish yourself health wise, and even balance out your hormones. I mean, frankly, I think balance is like it's a made up illusion, honestly. I don't have kids, so I can't speak to that part yet. So for parents who are listening, it's like, okay, there's balancing, there's creating what fulfilling on your needs with your kids. But I think it comes down to, looking at for yourself, like, what do you need spiritually? What do you need physically? What do you need, from a rest standpoint? Like, where are you in terms of replenishment? For some people, that might be like working 60 hours a week, and that is balance for them, you know? So I can't speak to everybody. I think it is a personal thing. And for me, it is like, I definitely need family time. And if I don't have family time after, a couple of weeks, I really can tell when Joe and I are spatting, I'll get like picky at a couple of things. I'm like, okay, we haven't spent enough time with each other. So like, let's actually like plan something over the next few weeks where we have like date night, right? I think you just kind of sense it as you come along. But honestly, I mean, to answer your question, I don't think that balance is a real thing.
Yeah.
That might be a controversial statement, but honestly, like
It's very subjective in it, to different people. But for your life specifically, you need, like you said, what I heard is that you need some alone time with your spouse, your partner, and date night. And those can be the balance of how you deal at home and work, right? To
yeah.
keep you alive and going forward. I think that's for me too. I mean, I'm at the situation where I need to see and be with my husband, every weekends to have a date night and things like that. But also, for me, nowadays I have older parents, my parents like 84, 82. So they're on the stage that and unfortunately they live all the way the other side of the country. And so I have to fly there to see them, and I don't get to see them often, every weekend or every other day, any things like that I could see them. So that's one of the downside of for us move far away from them, is because, we get to create this beautiful space here in Arizona, but then we don't get to share that with our loved one because they choose to live in the East Coast. And and now I'm spending, debating of how can I devise some of my time to go and see them while they're still living. So I'm at that stage where I have that older parents that I needed to think a lot more, dividing of my quality time to see them, and then how I can divide that time with my own family to be at peace with everything that we have to deal with. So that's where I'm at. And what about you, Charlize? What do you have to deal with when it comes to your balanced life?
Yeah, well, I work from home, so I think that changes a lot versus when I lived in Arizona and I would go into the office. I really enjoy working from home, but I've had to be a lot more disciplined about my environment. Like, for example, we used to live in a one-bedroom apartment where my office was in our bedroom, and I think like that was a lot harder for me mentally to focus and to thrive. I don't think that it was a positive environment. And then when we moved, now we have a 2 bedroom, and I made the second bedroom my office. It's helped me separate it a lot, actually. I don't really come in here on the weekends, and I think for me, I think I'm impacted a lot by my surroundings, whether it's people or place. So the vibes just kind of have to be right. And I think now it's a lot better. And Kevin goes to school during the week, so that's helpful because he'll be away and I don't have to worry about not having time with him because we're both busy. And then I think we're more intentional about our free time. So that's been really helpful. But I also see what you're saying too, Kim. It's like there's really no such thing as just like your work life and your personal life. Like it's just your life. And I think that right now I'm really enjoying what I do, that there's not like a negative, like when I think about work, it's just like, it just is what it is. And I'm just doing my thing, and my day to day looks different every day. It's not always the same. So I think that brings some spontaneity, honestly. And yeah, it's really nice. And I just get done what I have to get done. And that's that. And so yeah, it's definitely been an adjustment, and now I really enjoy it.
That's good. So how do you feel between owning a home and renting a home? So, I know Kim, you own a home, and then Charlize, you're renting. So how do you feel between owning your own home and then renting your home?
I can share. So it's an emotional thing, right? Like at least for me, owning a home is like so emotional because I want that. It's like almost like a fulfillment of like my parents' desire for me. Like I have stability and I have like some place of that I can call base where I can like make my own and also host. And now that I don't have kids of my own, but Joe's got three older kids, adult kids, and his first grandchild. So our first grandchild, right? So we're, second marriage for Joe and first for me. So this is his grandchild. But I would say that, like, the home, and why it's emotional is because we want to be able to host our grandkids and our family. And then of course my mom, and you spoke to having older parents. And so I want to be able to have a home where like my mom can stay, and also that she feels at home too. Like my mom's concern is that she's invading in our space, and I don't ever want that to be the case. So I want to have a home where she feels like at home and has her own space when she's visiting us. So, as far as a home goes, I'm very clear that it is an emotional decision and not a financial decision, right? Like I think that one of the biggest shocks for me was learning, like, in terms of the world of investment. I used to think that buying a home is like the best investment, right? That was a cultural conversation. Everybody is like, okay, buy a home, it's going to grow, and it does grow in value over time, right? But I found that, well, is that the best vehicle to grow your wealth? It maybe not. So if I was gonna put my money in the market in my retirement versus money in my home, it's like, well, I think it's better grown in the markets, as the studies have shown, versus putting the money, all of it, in the home. So I do own a home, and I'm also really clear that I'm gonna have a mortgage, and I'm actually okay with having a mortgage and paying the minimum on the mortgage rather than paying it all off now and then just putting extra into my retirement, which is going to have a higher growth.
And so you're talking about one of the wealth transfer conversation there, right? We have six, wealth transfer that can destroy your future, your financial future. And you just talking about one of that was mortgage. So
Yeah.
if you know the proper way of dealing with that, you can lose a ton of money in the wrong place as well. So that's another education we offer through our company,
Well,
right?
can I say two more things about that? So, Paul, it's because,
Mhm.
look, my mom got a 30-year loan back in 1999 when we built our home in Indianapolis or Carmel, Indiana, and she paid it off in 15 years. So for my mom, as an immigrant, she was like, I do not want to have any debt, and so for her, during the 2008 crisis, she didn't have to deal with the upside down mortgage. Like she'd already mostly paid it off at that point. I think I said 15 years. I don't know exactly what year if you do the math, 99 plus 15, right? So for her, it's paid off now. She still pays taxes on it in Indiana. And part of the emotional thing with having a home for a lot of people is that it's a legacy thing. It's that you can pass it down to your kids. But honestly, how many kids want to get the home from their parents? I mean, I would say not everybody. I mean, there's a percentage of people who do, but I would say there's a bigger majority who does not want to have the home that, you grew up in. Mostly you're going to sell it, right? So for people who like are attached to owning a home so that their kids can have it, very much likely your kids are going to sell it, and then they're going to take the money and invest it somewhere else because they'll have their own home, they have their own taste and that kind of thing. So I think that it really is important to clarify, is it an emotional decision or is it an investment decision? So, and then the other piece to it, the last thing I want to say about having a home is, I mentioned Switzerland earlier about, having the highest wealth per capita in the world. And part of their mentality is that, the percentage for homeowners in Switzerland is actually a lot lower. It's like in the 40% versus in America, it's 60%, right? And the difference is because how they view a home isn't necessarily like where the best place to put their appreciating asset. For a home, it's, for them, it's, like it's better to put it into a prudently diversified academic portfolio than it is to put it into a home. So, it's better sometimes to rent and when you have lower expenses than it is to own a home and you have more expenses, even though it seems like the better decision.
What are your view on that, Charlize?
Well, we're renting an apartment, and I think that fits for our lifestyle right now and the era of our lives. I think, well, one, of course, like having a mortgage is a big responsibility. And I think it's more than just that, but like being able to maintain your home and landscaping and furnishing it. And if you need to do renovations or property taxes or anything like that. And with renting, there is less responsibility where like if something broke, like you have maintenance and you're able to, I think, freely travel more and do things and not worry so much about your property. Like if you need somebody to come and look at your house, if you're away or something like that. So I think that that's nice, but also having a home is nice because you have that privacy, you have that ownership, you can do whatever you want with it, you have a lot more freedom, and of course, like you can build equity in your home and those things. And so the goal would be to work towards being able to buy a home and raise a family one day. And I think that that's something like that's another conversation where okay, well, we would need to save for that future. And yeah, and so I think right now, like renting fits. And I've seen plenty of families who live here because it's just so expensive to buy property now. Homes are so expensive, and it's actually just more affordable for families to have an apartment, have like a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom apartment and raise their family like that's really the only option for some people. So I'm thankful for that. But of course, like a home is, it's more homey and you can really put the roots in the ground with it. And I think this is just more like temporary, but I'm also like really thankful for this location because it does kind of feel more homey versus our other apartment that we left and we moved like to a completely different town. And I think that the area is much better. So I think both are honestly great. It's really just like what can you do and what do you want and what works best for where you're at in life and your family and those things. And I love the idea of hosting and stuff. And here, of course, we're a lot more limited to that. And we're able to have a guest room, but we want to be able to host more than that. And it's like there's only so many people that you can even invite. So there are those limitations as well. So it's if you like to have bigger gatherings and have your family over, I think it's nicer to have a property. And of course, you have to be careful if you're too loud or things like that. So yeah, you just have a lot more freedom in a home. So yeah, I think, and it's nice to like build memories and have that.
Yeah, that's a great one, And I back to what Kim was saying about, if your home could be, if your parents build their home and then would you like to have their home, passed on to you? And considering their location is in Indiana and you're here in Scottsdale area, right? So, I mean, would you like to inherit their home, or you gonna keep it or sell it?
My mom's already planning on me and my sister selling it. I mean, she's the best. She's remodeling the house right now and with the anticipation that, my sister and I are going to sell it afterwards because my sister lives in Indiana, 15 minutes away. She's, built her own home, and I live, of course, as you mentioned, in Arizona. And so it's not very likely I'm ever going to move back to Indiana. I grew up there and I'm not sure I want to go back for the rest of my adulthood. So I do love it out here. And, part of it is, Joe's looking at the future, we kind of plan for the future. So wherever that is, and our future is more like West Coast because, that's where, Joe's kids are. And we're actually looking at potentially moving up to like Northern California or even like Nevada so that we can be like, in the middle between all the kids, it's where the grandkids are. And so we might keep our home in Arizona or we may sell it. I don't know. So, I mean, the future is, it's unwritten, right? But I think the future kind of calls us to what we do now. But we are planning on, as far as time with family, we definitely want to be wherever family is going to be.
Yeah, that's good. For us, we're the same way, but for sure, we're gonna keep, building here in Scottsdale, Arizona. But we're not gonna be able to stay in just one place. We're looking at creating, the homes that caters to special needs families. So we're looking at creating the compounding area where we have opportunity to service, special needs kids. So Charles planning all of that as well in incorporate all of that idea into where we actually would like to live half of the year here. And then our future planning for the future is to live somewhere near oceans area, which one of my favorite places is Hawaii. So, a possibility that we're having a home in Hawaii in the future. So that's something we're looking at, but we're not sure either we want to buy or renting there. So, we're going to have to put that into consideration, the numbers and calculations of all aspect of how we look at finances. And that's one of the options we're looking at. I want to go straight to what does financial literacy mean to you and how do you seek to improve it?
Yeah. I say education is only as important as how you're planning on using it. And I like the follow-up question together with it because I think it's understanding the tools that are available to us, but then also how does it impact me and add to my quality of life. So, as far as when I look at the things that I tell my clients, like as what we tell our clients, I look for myself, like, does that actually make sense to me? Like what kind of life do I want to have? Does it fulfill my purpose? And part of my purpose is being able to live freely and create and live a life that I love, and to encourage my clients to do the same thing. I mean, I cannot tell my clients to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. And I would invest in the same things I would tell my clients to invest in. I would, do those same things. So as far as using it, it's like, learning things and taking the things that are going to put it into practice that fulfill on the life that I want to create. Does that answer the question?
No, I mean, it's not right or wrong. It's just how you deal with it. Different people deal with money and financial education differently than other. And so, it's great. It's good. But thank you for answering that. At least, how do you deal with your what does financial literacy mean to you? And how do you seek improvement on that?
Yeah, I think going to the Financial Foundations course, of course, is where I would get like a really solid foundation, honestly, in learning and just one place to really get all the knowledge. And from there, like improving that course because we're working on together to continue to improve it all the time. And of course, like really to continue educating myself and like, things change and new things come and there are going to be new ways to save more money and make sure your money's working for you. And I think just, being up with the times and I think just, not putting your head in the sand type thing and being able to embrace it all and all the changes. So
that's good. And how do you guys, you guys can jump in. How do you deal with financial stress, especially when it comes to, all of us have those ups and downs in life and we all deal with that stress differently. But how do you guys deal with that on your, when you come to your financial stress?
Well, I think I used to look at it from like, I'll never have enough. I mean, it looks like where the stress is coming from because I think that there's a healthy amount of stress that we kind of need to, at least for me, I need a little encouragement sometimes. Sometimes it's like I operate better from fear than I do from possibility. And I gotta admit, it's not always, it's not always rainbows and butterflies, right? But I think it goes back down to like staying with the rules of investing. I really, if you're stressed out because I've been in credit card debt where it's like I've been extremely stressed out and just trying to like keep my head above water. And that is extremely, stressful when you're just trying to survive, right? So for me, it was like I just wanted to get out of that hole. And also it's like how do you to live like to love the life I have while I'm creating the life of my dreams. And I just remind myself of, what am I here and doing it for? And, what is that like my ultimate purpose? So even in those times, it's what kept me going and, to go through that kind of the phase was there's a future of like, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. It's not always going to be like this. And then staying disciplined to like, with that practice of like, okay, just put a little money aside every month. I mean, I think I used to be like, well, one day when I make like $1 million, then everything will be fine. I don't think that's very realistic. And I think I had at the time, I was very much in a hopeful rather than like having a plan where I can be that would give me clarity. So I think having a plan will keep me also like less stressed out because I know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. But if you're going through it blindly, I mean, it is hard to keep the end in mind, and it feels like there's a just never ending stress.
Yeah. So, Charlize, how do you deal with your financial stress if you have any?
Yeah, I think having non-negotiables. So just not creating the stress, I think like or not kind of putting fuel to the fire. So having that emergency fund brings me a lot more peace of mind, and yeah, and then just making sure that I continue to stay disciplined. I think that helps me because I think that if I were to, I think I'm more like organized, right? So, but if I were to like let go and not be so, I think that would create a lot of stress for me. And yeah, I think honestly being organized helps me with the stress as well. Like as long as I see what's happening and where we're going, I think that that's good enough for me.
Yeah. I think that's very helpful to understand where your generation feel when you get the right kind of tool in place. Because you seem to be very free around money and finances because of the knowledge that you are able to receive earlier age, and surrounding yourself with a lot of educator in finance as well in that area helped you to stay disciplined and be so aware of where you at. So that's, and to me, you look like very free around money. And I think, money create a lot of stress for a lot of people. It because number one, it's probably come from, attachment of the past and then an unknown of the future. So that create a lot of stress for their life because they don't have the tool. And then let me ask you this. So how do you feel about the concept of financial independence? You can answer that, any one of you.
Financial independence for me looks like, not asking mommy and daddy for money type vibe. I don't know. I think for me, it's like now I make my own money and I have to steward it and I have to be responsible. So I'm not in a place where I'm coming and I'm begging for money, I guess. I don't know. I think financial independence now is just like I feel like completely independent in so many different ways, and it all kind of just came all at once because before getting married I was living at home, and then now I have to be responsible, like to pay my own rent and to get my own groceries and things like that I never had to pay for or worry about before. So it's nice to be like I can do that, and that again, like I have to make sacrifices because before it was like I could just use my money to, if I wanted to go to eaters or like on clothes or on travel. And I don't have like that like luxury almost like I did before because now I have other financial responsibilities that I have to take care of first. And so I have to be able to say no to things, and I have to be able to learn how to save for things or just work more and find other ways to make more and not limit myself either to where like, oh, well, this is all I have and this is all I can do, but finding other ways to increase that. So yeah, I think that's kind of what financial independence looks like for me is really just, I think, being able to do it on my own and not having to rely on someone else to take care of it for me.
No, thank you for sharing that. What about you, Kim? And I want you to also, give people tools at the end of your conversation. Where can they find helps to get themselves on track.
Sure. Well, and Charlize, I really am like envious of you. It's all, I mean, and I say that with like all my love and affection, and because it really is like, at a young age, I mean, you're gosh, 22.
Yeah, I just
Yeah, right. So, I mean, that's amazing. Like that to be able to like have that kind of foundation for yourself and like learning so young. And, in my 20s, gosh, I mean, I got into all sorts of financial trouble, right? Like credit cards and all the things, right? So, and like I had to learn things the hard way. But I would say that financial independence for me, it meant different things at different times. And, as a kid, it was like, I just want to like live on my own and do whatever I want and not have any rules. And then I got to college and started making my own money after college. And then I spent, like, I went on a spending spree. And it wasn't until like probably my even mid 30s that I started to be like, okay, like I cannot go on like this. And so I think what independence means to me now is like in a similar way, Charlize, is not relying on anybody else or any entity. And when I say that, I mean like credit cards. It's like when I see one of the things I see my clients doing now is they're asking about credit cards and like is it good to have, and they're getting credit cards and they're putting money on it, like pretending like it's theirs, like it's that money is theirs, right? And then so they relate to it like it's money that they can spend, rather than a credit card line is not money that you can spend. It is money that is, if we relate to it like an emergency, right? I think that's where we get into trouble. So for me now, as a financial advisor, where I can like bring my own mistakes to the table and just say, don't do what I did, okay? It's really to learn having like that I have a say in my own financial freedom. And that also means having some level of discipline to be able to, and discipline really is a gift for me at this age. It's like where I don't have to be relying on a credit card or somebody else to like give me like a sense of like, autonomy. So financial independence means like power and autonomy to have a say in what what I spend my money on now and in the future. And it's learning to use those tools and learning tools. I mean, to know that I have like the right tools in place, and also to have a sense of possibility. And I think for me, like as far as tools go, gosh, knowing where my credit, for those people who are like looking, like one, I would say get your credit report if you don't already know it. And if you do know it, then paying attention to it and, kind of playing that game. Your credit only matters as much. It's basically your word, right? It's like how can people relate to you, or can they rely on you to pay the money back in time, right? If you look at the credit score as like a score of your trustworthiness with money, I think it's an indication of something, right? And it doesn't mean it's not good or bad. It's just like, okay, well, this kind of tells me the scoreboard, and then I got to do something about it, right? I think what the next thing is, like we can go to a CSP, I think it's CSPFG, to be able to go to our website, and then, and then the Financial Foundations course.com is a really great resource. So the Financial Foundations course, I mean, gosh, we offer it as a free course 3 times a year. Our next course is April 22nd for those on the East Coast, and April 24th for those on the West Coast. And of all the things that I've ever seen in my life, like, gosh, the Financial Foundations course is probably the best resource to be able to give people an exposure to and a deep dive into all the topics where you could potentially lose money and make mistakes, not just from a behavioral standpoint, but from what tools are available, and then to put it all together. And we even use Retirement Analyzer that Charlize referenced to be able to put it all together so it's applicable and that you can take with you, moving forward in the future. So I really do believe in that, and I use it for myself as well. And in addition to like my Excel, like to look at the Excel document to see on an ongoing basis. But those are just off the top of my head, those are the basic tools I would really recommend: getting a coach, Financial Foundations course, getting your credit.
Yeah, so we only have like certain amount of minutes here that we can share with you, but keep plugging into to listen to this podcast, and we'll reveal a lot more tools to help those who are listening to us. So, and first I wanted to say thank you for both of you for being here and joining us in this conversation about money and finance. Especially, we want to be so real and authentic about who we are also. And it's when it comes to money, it's so hard to have that conversation about it, because we, even we work in the financial field, we still have to battle the conversation around shame and guilt of our past. And especially, the older generation, I can tell you that from my own experience, I have so many shame and guilt around money, and it's so hard to let that go, and I have to work on myself every single day to let that voice to quiet down in my head. And then especially if you are, coming from an unprivileged world, like, a third world country like myself, who are blessed to be here in the United States, getting to live an American dream through hard works and disciplines, and, and continue to fail and get up and learn. It's never too late. Wouldn't you say it's never too late to start learning and saving? Because that's is where the gold start growing. That's where the seeds start planting and growing. If you just start taking actions on what you are hearing from our conversation today. What would you say that works for you, that you can help other people to see, what they can do for themselves?
I would say, regardless of where you're at and no matter what age you're at, it's always a great time to start learning and educating yourself and to start saving. Sometimes I have a wide range of clients in different ages. And so if you're young, like you think, oh, okay, there's one day when. But when you're older, you look back, you're like, I should have started younger. It's like, well, you start when you start, and any time's a great start. And if you started and you've made mistakes along the way, it's okay to start over also. So give yourself some grace, and and then continuing to educate yourself. That's the best way you can arm yourself against the world of the world of ignorance, right? I think that ignorance is our worst enemy, and including ourselves. So hire somebody, getting an expert coach that you trust, that you have a great relationship with, that that's going to guide you along the way. And even just, you can hire and you can interview different financial advisors, by the way. You don't have to go with that first one, right? So see what's available to you, and then do your research and get yourself educated, is no matter what age you're at. And thank you so much for this opportunity, so Paul.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I really do appreciate you guys for being here.